Desiigner, the Brooklyn kid with the viral hit that crashed through the gates and made him the youngest rapper in years to hit #1. Panda didn't just explode, it turned him into a household name overnight. At only 18, he had millions of people chanting about a black and white BMW. Then he signed with Ye's label, got dropped into the life of Pablo, and even made the XXL freshman class. The energy around him? Wild. The expectations? Sky high. But that high-speed launch? It came without a runway. Once the smoke cleared, the comparisons to Future got louder. Critics were not shy about calling him a sound-alike. His first mixtape didn't change many minds, and his follow-ups never touched the charts like Panda did. Timmy Turner got a bit of traction, but by the time his EP dropped in 2018, the buzz was fading fast. It peaked at 161. That's not what anyone expected from someone with that kind of start. Behind the scenes, things were messier. Desiigner claimed he had music done, but labels just held it back. 20 songs leaked at one point. He left good music in 2019, and his release schedule slowed way down. Add in legal trouble, public controversies, and mental health struggles. It all added up. From being arrested in a road rage incident to a bizarre, indecent exposure charge on a flight, his name started popping up for the wrong reasons. At this point, the hype machine's long gone. Desiigner himself said people confuse his silence for failure, but without steady output, clear identity, or consistent momentum, most just saw him as another one-hit wonder. Bow wow. From a 3-year-old obsessed with rap to a 13-year-old with a platinum album, his rise was lightning quick. Snoop Dogg gave him his name after watching him perform as a kid, and Jermaine Dupri signed him not long after. That debut album, double platinum. Songs like Bounce With Me and Bow Wow, That's My Name ruled the early 2000s. At one point, it looked like he'd carry that hype into adult stardom, but as the years went on, cracks started to show. The Child Star label stuck hard, and when he dropped Lil from his name, the music didn't really grow up with him. Even though Unleashed hit #3 on the charts, critics still questioned his depth. He never quite broke through with the kind of lyrical credibility other rappers earned. And as the genre evolved toward grittier, more authentic voices, Bow Wow's image felt more like a brand than an artist. Sales dipped. Later albums didn't chart the same. His move to Cash Money Records didn't spark a new chapter, and attempts to rebrand kept stalling. Then came the personal side, health issues, addiction to lean, and a hospital scare on tour. He's spoken about missing milestones, like prom and college, which makes sense given how early fame hit. Social media hasn't been kind either. He's often become the punchline in memes or dragged for statements. And in an industry that rewards reinvention, his music didn't keep pace. While he's still around in entertainment, the shift from next big thing to where'd it go has shaped how people see him. Not as a flop, but as someone whose career just never climbed as high as it could have. Tay-K. His name exploded in headlines almost as fast as it hit the charts. Born in Long Beach, but raised in Texas, he started uploading songs as a teenager, building early buzz with tracks on SoundCloud. But the moment everything changed was at The Race. That song dropped while he was actually running from police, and the video leaned straight into the manhunt. Wild visuals, taunting lyrics, and it worked. The Race cracked the Billboard Hot 100 and got certified platinum. The hype was instant, but it wasn't built to last. The same events that made him famous also sealed his future. Before The Race, Tay-K had already been arrested in connection to a deadly home invasion in Texas. While on house arrest, he cut off his ankle, monitor, and vanished, which led to even more charges, including the murder of a photographer in San Antonio. By the time he was finally caught, the music was barely getting a chance to grow. His mixtapes dropped from behind bars, but the momentum faded quickly. In court, things went downhill. He was convicted of murder and multiple robberies, getting 55 years in the first trial. Then in 2025, another conviction added 80 more years. Both sentences might run at the same time, but either way, he's locked in. Legal fees burned through most of his label money, and lawsuits from victims' families added more financial weight. With no room to tour, evolve, or even record freely, Tay-K's career turned into a one-track legacy. The Race became the story, and everything after it just confirmed the tragic arc. His story isn't about fading out. It's about getting cut short before there was ever time to grow. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, Morray. He came out of Fayetteville with a voice full of soul and a story to match. After years of gospel singing, juvenile lockups, and call center jobs, he hit the map in the year 2020 with Quicksand. That song had heart. People felt it. By early 2021, it was charting. Streaming numbers were climbing, and cosigns from names like J. Cole and Rick Ross helped push it further. Not long after, he dropped Street Sermons, which hit number 41 on the Billboard 200. Then came the J. Cole feature on My Life, and that single soared to number 2. The momentum looked real, but then things slowed down. Morray did not vanish, he was still recording, but label issues jammed up his releases. He said it himself, he wanted to drop more music, but deals with Pick 6 and Interscope left him stuck. Fans started asking what happened. While others in melodic rap kept flooding the space, Morray's output dried up. That meant the hype from Quicksand lost some of its grip. When he did resurface, it was in 2025 with Long Story Short. By then, people were curious but less tuned in. Singles like Out the Hole aimed to regain ground, and he opened up about how frustrating the last few years had been. But in a crowded space with rod wave comparisons flying, the pressure to stand out is real. He's got talent, no doubt, and his voice still cuts through. But the early run did not evolve fast enough to lock in lasting momentum. Now it's on him. The music's still coming, but whether that spark returns at full force, that depends on how consistent he stays and how clearly he carves out his lane. Calboy. His name exploded with Envy Me, but keeping that fire going proved harder than sparking it. Born Calvin Lashin Woods, he came up in Chicago's South Side and Calumet City, channeling real pain from poverty, loss, and violence into his music. His breakout track hit hard, climbing to number 31 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stacking up over 200 million views. That kind of impact promised a launch pad, not a ceiling. But that's where things started stalling. He had label support from RCA and a spot on the XXL freshman list, but momentum slipped. He dropped a few projects, but none matched the shockwave of his debut. Delays started stacking up. His debut album never landed when promised. Then came the label drama. Calboy called out Polo Grounds Music, saying he funded releases himself and felt exploited. Public disputes like that don't exactly help an artist's trajectory, especially when they're still building their catalog. Add in the legal hit from 2022 when he was booked for aggravated battery, and that created another major roadblock. After that, the consistency just wasn't there. Other artists from his era pushed out more work, grew their brands, and stayed in the mix. Calboy's output slowed. The industry doesn't wait around, and his one huge hit became a tough act to follow. With little chart traction since, strained industry relationships, and branding setbacks, he's stuck in a strange space. Someone who could have been a star, but ran into too many barriers to break all the way through. K-Camp, he came out swinging with radio-ready hooks and a sound that felt built for club speakers, but the follow-through didn't exactly keep pace with the early buzz. Raised in Atlanta, though born in Milwaukee, he was already recording in high school. After dropping local mixtapes, his 2013 single, Money Baby, turned out to be the surprise launchpad. That led to a deal with Interscope and real chart action. Cut Her Off followed and went platinum, hitting number 49 on the Billboard Hot 100. Things were moving. His debut album, Only Way Is Up, charted top 20. Comfortable went double platinum, and he had momentum. He even landed in XXL's freshman class and got love from Rolling Stone. But after that stretch, the pace slowed. Projects kept coming, like Rare Sound and Kiss 5, but none sparked that same mainstream level of attention. He eventually left Interscope, claiming the label held back his creativity. Then came TikTok. Lottery, Renegade, exploded in 2019, thanks to a viral dance that took over the platform. It brought him back into the spotlight, but it also tied his resurgence to social media waves more than musical depth. His later releases dropped independently, but without major label push. Reaching wide audiences became harder. He's got platinum plaques and hits that defined a moment, but sustaining it proved trickier. His lane became heavily melodic, which worked early on, but also risked making him sound one-dimensional in a crowded field. Now, outside the label system, he's calling his own shots. But the lack of massive impact lately puts him more in the category of early promise that never totally transformed into long-term dominance. OJ, the Juiceman. He built a name in the streets and the mixtape world, not the charts. Raised in East Atlanta, he was hustling through local circuits before streaming ruled everything. Early on, he linked up with Gucci Mane. Both came up from the same blocks, and that connection helped him carve out a space in the trap scene. His biggest track, Make the Trap Say, dropped in 2008 and hit solid numbers on the R&B and rap charts, but it never fully cracked the mainstream. He released The Other Side of the Trap in 2009 and kept pushing mixtapes nonstop, building a catalog with real street weight. But that's where the traction mostly stayed, street level. Studio albums were few and far between, with his second one arriving 5 years later. He kept his name alive, popping up with high-profile artists like Jadakiss and R. Kelly. But without consistent album drops or mainstream campaign, the commercial climb stayed flat. There were setbacks, too. He was shot 8 times in 2009 and still showed up to perform that same week. The injuries left him with a permanent limp. Then came diabetes, which he said eventually required daily insulin. In recent years, legal problems added another layer. In 2024, he was arrested after a high-speed chase with drugs and a firearm found in his car. Throw in label confusion, a fallout with Gucci Mane, and a manager claiming he disrespected Jadakiss, and you've got a career with movement, but not scale. OJ had raw energy, mixtape heat, and local impact, but he never made the leap into long-term superstardom. Even with the talent and name recognition to do it, J-Kwon, he had one of the biggest debut singles of the early 2000s, and then just sort of vanished. Born in St. Louis, he broke out as a teenager with Tipsy, which hit number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became a global party anthem. His debut album, Hood Hop, moved over 125,000 units in its first week and climbed to number 7 on the Billboard 200. Everything was set up for a run. He had production from the Track Boys, who crafted a wild, percussive sound that helped him stand out. He was on Saturday Night Live. He had a feature with Bow Wow, and people knew his name. But after Hood Hop, things went quiet. No follow-up. Single caught fire. It wasn't until 4 years later that he dropped another full project, and by then the momentum had dipped hard. His later albums, Hood Hop 2, Hood Hop 2.5, and a self-titled one in 2010, were mostly digital or independent releases with little push. A label even said he was missing in action that year, which didn't help. He eventually resurfaced and said he was just taking time off, but the damage to his visibility was done. Without major label support, the outreach shrunk. He leaned into independence, but never matched that original wave. Critics said his music lacked versatility, and being tagged as the tipsy guy made it hard to pivot. Now he's often referenced in conversations about one-hit wonders, not as a lasting figure in hip-hop. His story's a reminder. Even a huge debut doesn't guarantee a long run, especially if the machine behind it disappears. Kid Ink. He had that stretch where it looked like he'd never leave the radio. Coming out of Los Angeles, he started as a beat maker, working behind the scenes before stepping to the front. He dropped early mixtapes like Crash Landing and Wheels Up, building buzz with melodic hooks and a pop rap blend that fit right into the early 2000s teens landscape. His independent debut, Up and Away, charted well, and by the time he signed with RCA, he was already poised to pop. Then came My Own Lane, his peak project, packed with features and polished production. Show Me, with Chris Brown, hit number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100 and topped rhythmic radio. Tracks like Main Chick and Is You Down kept the momentum alive, and by 2015, he followed it up with Full Speed and a surprise tape, Summer in the Winter. But after that peak stretch, the momentum faded. His EP7 series in 2017 and Missed Calls in 2018 didn't move the same way. Later projects like Alive arrived quietly, with little chart presence. Kid Ink's style, radio-friendly, hook-driven, started to feel crowded out in a rap world, leaning toward trap, drill, and viral chaos. His brand didn't collapse, but it plateaued. The shift from major label firepower to quieter releases, longer gaps, and less cultural spotlight changed everything. He's still around, still making music, but not with the same presence. What was once a steady climb just sort of stalled. Not a flame out, but a fade. The industry moved fast, and his lane got tighter. Trinidad James. His rise was meteoric, all gold everything. Dropped in 2012 and turned him into a household name almost overnight. Born in Trinidad and raised across Canada, Florida, New York, and Atlanta, he didn't even start rapping seriously until late 2011. Within a year, he had a platinum single, a major label deal with Def Jam, and a remix with T.I., Jeezy, and 2 Chainz. That track peaked at number 36 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became an instant anthem. His flamboyant fashion and confident delivery made him stand out. But behind the hype, cracks were forming. His mixtape, Don't Be Safe, got re-released under Def Jam, but there wasn't a strong follow-up. He reportedly struggled to deliver a full album fast enough for the label, and the pressure didn't help. By August 2014, Def Jam dropped him. No debut album ever surfaced. He announced the music he'd been working on would come out for free, and told contributors not to expect payment, because in his words, he had no money. Independent releases followed, but none matched his earlier impact. Projects like 10PC Mild and No One Is Safe were inconsistent and didn't recapture attention. He's since shifted focus, working behind the scenes as a songwriter and video director, even getting royalties from Uptown Funk, which sampled his work. That kept his name alive, but not in the way fans expected. What started as one of the fastest climbs in recent memory became a cautionary tale. When the machine moves faster than the artist, it rarely ends in long-term stardom. Memphis Bleek. He was always right there, just never all the way there. Coming up in Brooklyn's Marcy houses, the same projects as Jay-Z, Bleek got early exposure on Jay's Reasonable Doubt and carried the weight of being next up before his first solo album even dropped. His debut, Coming of Age, landed in '99, hit number 7 on the Billboard 200, and went gold. He had label muscle, high-level production, and features most rappers would dream of. Bleek stayed active through the early 2000s, dropping The Understanding, Made, and 534. That last one came with a solo Jay-Z track, Dear Summer, which, awkwardly, ended up being more memorable than any of Bleek's verses. He had some charting singles, like Is That Yo Chick, but none that turned him into a household name. Critics often said he lacked the lyrical punch or identity to stand out, and the constant Jay-Z comparisons didn't help. In between albums, he stepped back to care for his injured brother, which slowed momentum. Then, after 534, the planned follow-up, The Process, never surfaced. He left Rockefeller in '09, trying to run his own shop, but the visibility dipped. He passed on a lead role in Drumline, something even Jay reportedly pushed him to take. That could have changed the game, but fear of stepping outside music kept his profile contained. Now he runs Warehouse Music Group and still talks about doing music with Jay. But the peak passed. Bleek never flopped. He just never broke out beyond that second tier. Loyal, visible, and respected. But when people say underachieved, they're usually talking about the gap between the platform he had and the spotlight he didn't fully claim. Canibus. He was supposed to be the next elite lyricist, but the execution never caught up to the expectation. Born in Kingston, raised across the US and UK, he brought a sharp academic style that made him a rapper's rapper. He started strong, building buzz through early guest spots and battle credibility. But his first major spotlight came with the LL Cool J feud. That led to Second Round KO, a vicious diss that made headlines and set the table for his debut. Canibus dropped in 1998 and went gold, but critics hated the production. Wyclef's pop-leaning beats didn't match Canibus's aggressive energy, and that mismatch haunted the album. After that, he bounced from producer to producer, label to label, always chasing a sound that could match his complex rhyme. His second album improved, but the momentum had already slowed. He joined a supergroup, the Hearstmen, but their project barely materialized. Albums like Mic Club and Rip the Jacker gained praise from underground heads, especially the latter, produced entirely by Stoop, but mainstream success kept slipping further away. By 2003, he had enlisted in the U.S. Army. Then came a string of poorly promoted albums, leaks, and misfire. In 2012, he brought a notepad to a battle with disaster and gave up mid-round. That moment erased years of battle clout in one awkward scene. Canibus never stopped releasing music, but the gap between his vocabulary and the industry's sound only widened. He was brilliant, but out of sync. What started with nuclear potential ended in scattered experiments and a reputation more mythic than mainstream. Lil Zane. He started writing rhymes as a kid in Atlanta and had the charisma to back it up. Touring with an R&B group before he was even 20, Lil Zane had his eyes locked on mainstream success. His first big single got serious traction, dominating the rap charts for weeks and pulling in a solid run on the mainstream boards. That track was everywhere, and for a minute, he looked like the next big thing. His debut album started slow, but then jumped into the top 30 the following week. Eventually, it sold nearly 500,000 copies. Not bad for someone barely out of high school, but after that, things started to fizzle. His second album came out 3 years later with a name change and weak numbers. He blamed the label, saying they dropped the ball on promotion and backing. That record barely scraped the charts and sold a fraction of what his debut did. After that, he took the indie route, but that came with its own problems. No big label means no big push. His third album didn't chart at all. The singles disappeared without a trace. Then came long gaps, forgotten mixtapes, and albums that never landed. He kept dropping music, but without momentum or visibility, it barely made a dent. Rebranding didn't help, and splitting his focus between acting and music likely slowed things down even more. On top of that, the industry was evolving fast. Streaming took over, trends flipped, and newer artists claimed the spotlight. Lil Zane never really adapted, and without that next breakout hit or major label muscle, he slowly faded into the background. Young Buck. He jumped into rap young and fast, recording in studios by his early teens and grabbing the attention of big names not long after. His break came when he linked up with 50 Cent and joined G-Unit, sliding straight into the mainstream. That connection put him in front of huge audiences, gave him major label muscle, and got him on big tours. His solo debut landed in the top 3 and went platinum, and the follow-up album did the same on the charts, backed by heavy production and a loaded guest list. But once that relationship with G-Unit broke, everything shifted. Buck claimed 50 Cent used contract control to block releases and features, cutting off momentum just when he needed it most. When that infamous phone call leaked, the one where Buck was begging to stay, it didn't help his image at all. Then came a pivot to mixtapes, which kept him visible, but without a label push, none of them hit the way his first records did. Legal issues didn't make it any easier. He served time in federal prison, and the break cost him even more career momentum. After that, he leaned into independence, dropping music through his own label and relying on shows to stay active. But without a second mainstream wave or reinvention, his visibility dropped. Meanwhile, the rap landscape evolved quickly. Streaming took over, trends shifted, and newer artists dominated. Buck's style and structure didn't adapt fast enough, and the industry moved on. Despite flashes of promise and raw talent, his path got clipped by a mix of contract drama, label control, public fallouts, and timing that never quite synced back up. Charles Hamilton. He built a cult buzz almost overnight, flooding the internet with mixtapes and ideas before most artists even had a strategy. His Hamiltonization process dropped 8 mixtapes in rapid succession, each showing off his quirky, introspective, and sample-heavy style. Then came The Pink Lava Lamp, a deeply personal debut album, recorded during periods of homelessness, entirely self-produced, and dropped independently after creative disputes with his label. It didn't chart, but it became a fan favorite and cemented him as a blog-era darling. By the end of 2008, he'd signed to Interscope and landed a spot on Double XL's freshman cover. His buzz was undeniable, but within a year, it started to collapse. His second album, This Perfect Life, was shelved after disputes over production credits. He gave Jay Dilla a posthumous executive producer credit, which stirred backlash. Then he was dropped from Interscope. That's where things got messier. Hamilton entered a psychiatric hospital, later spoke about undiagnosed bipolar disorder, and went quiet. Arrests, health issues, and a stretch using a wheelchair followed. He kept releasing music, over 100 mixtapes at last count, but none of it stuck like his early work. His comeback album in 2016 had critical praise, but barely made a ripple. By then, the game had changed. Radio leaned toward trap, streaming ran the show, and quirky introspection wasn't chart-friendly anymore. He struggled to rebrand or capture a second wave. With no label push and limited touring, his name faded fast. The talent never disappeared, but momentum, timing, and personal battles made sure the spotlight did. Shyne. He was barely in his 20s when DJ Clark Kent discovered him freestyling in a Brooklyn barbershop. That led to a deal with Bad Boy Records, where Sean Combs rolled out the red carpet. The hype was real. People thought Shyne could be the next heir to the throne Biggie left behind. His voice, his delivery, the buzz, everything lined up. His debut album dropped in 2000 and charted in the top 5. But his moment barely started before it got ripped apart. In December 1999, a shooting at Club New York changed everything. Shyne, Diddy, and Jennifer Lopez were there. Shots were fired, people were injured, and the headlines exploded. By 2001, Shyne was sentenced to a 10-year prison term for assault and weapon possession. He was just 22. He dropped a second album from behind bars, but he couldn't promote it. No touring, no appearances, just press from a jail cell. When he got out in 2009, he was deported back to Belize. Without access to the US market, his rap career had no runway. He tried comebacks, dropped mixtapes, even signed with Def Jam again, but nothing stuck. In prison, he embraced Orthodox Judaism and changed his name to Moses Michael Levi Barrow. Then he pivoted hard. In 2020, he won a seat in Belize's House of Representatives. Now he leads the opposition party. The rap world remembers him for what could have been, a promising artist derailed by a moment that reshaped his entire life. He didn't just leave hip-hop, he traded verses for politics. Shyne's story isn't about fading out, it's about being ripped out. Before the second chapter even started, Saigon. He came out of prison with a purpose and a pen. Inspired by books and bars, he started dropping mixtapes in the early 2000s and built serious underground hype. His wordplay was sharp, and his content was more reflective than flashy. That made him stand out. Atlantic Records signed him in the mid-2000s, and expectations were sky high. But then, delays. Lots of them. Atlantic kept pushing for club singles. Saigon wanted to make something deeper. That tension stalled his debut album for years. When The Greatest Story Never Told finally came out in 2011, it was praised for its message and production. Just Blaze, Jay-Z, Q-Tip, the features were heavy, but the sales weren't. The album landed in the 60s on the Billboard charts and sold about 11,000 in its first week. The buzz that once surrounded him had already cooled off. After that, he released sequels and new projects, But the momentum never matched the buildup from his mixtape days. He formed his own label, stayed vocal, stayed lyrical, but the mainstream didn't follow. Saigon also got tangled in controversies. He was attacked with a wine bottle during a robbery, punched Prodigy at a show, and publicly quit rap on MySpace, only to come back. He criticized Diddy, beefed with Joe Budden, and called out the music industry more than once. He never landed a big crossover hit, and his music didn't adapt to the streaming-first world. By the time his debut dropped, the soundscape had already shifted. He stayed true to his message, but timing, label issues, and constant friction with the industry left his career trapped between promise and poor execution. Cassidy. He came out the Philly battle scene blazing, known for punchlines that had underground fans hanging on every word. Swizz beats brought him into full surface, and his first big single, Hotel, cracked the top 10 and had everyone thinking this dude had serious crossover appeal. That debut album, Split Personality, debuted at number 2 and went gold. But for a guy built on raw bars, some fans didn't love the soft lawn. Then came I'm a Hoosler. That single hit harder, more in line with his lyrical rep. The album moved over 90,000 copies first week and solidified Cassidy as more than just a mixtape name. But just as things were heating up, everything stopped. A shooting in 2005 left one man dead, and Cassidy was arrested. He ended up serving time, missing the window to promote what should have been his defining album. By the time he got back out, momentum was fading. Then in 2006, he survived a brutal car accident that left him with head trauma and broken bones. That recovery slowed him again, and the follow-up album Bars only did around 63,000 first week. Not terrible, but nowhere near what it could have been. After that, he went independent, dropped Cash, and watched it struggle to chart. From there, it was mixtapes, scattered projects, and long gaps, legal issues, health setbacks, inconsistent branding, and no major label support pulled him away from the spotlight. Even worse, he admitted blowing through money early on. He had talent, hype, a real fan base, but every time he was close to rising, something knocked him off the ladder. Cory Gunz. He came into the game with heavyweight expectations. Son of Peter Gunz, signed young, co-signed by Jay-Z, and making moves before he was old enough to drive. By his mid-teens, he already had a deal through Def Jam and was killing mixtapes. He had a lightning-fast flow, complex rhyme patterns, and the kind of punchline-heavy delivery that lit up battle rap fans. When Lil Wayne dropped 6 Foot 7 Foot in 2011, Cory's verse made people stop and pay attention. It looked like the door to the big leagues had finally opened. But then came the stumbles. No major solo album followed that massive exposure. Despite being on Young Money, Cory got none of the push his label mates did. No breakout single, no album rollout. Instead, he got arrested for gun possession in early 2012. That legal case and the threat of jail time forced him into the background. His MTV reality show Son of a Gun had potential, but it didn't translate into chart success. While mixtapes kept coming, they didn't hit the charts, and his name started sliding into whatever happened to territory. Inside Young Money, he got overshadowed by megastars like Drake and Nicki. Without major marketing, Cory's hyper-technical style didn't match what mainstream rap was pushing. No crossover hit, no album, no big comeback, just glimpses. He never stopped rapping. But the industry moved fast. Cory Gunz had the skills, but timing, label priorities, legal setbacks, and changing trends kept him stuck at the edge of stardom without ever breaking through. Lil Twist. He started rapping when most kids were learning long division. By 10, he had a regional hit in Dallas. By 12, he opened for Lil Wayne. Wayne flew him out to Atlanta, got him in the studio, and eventually signed him to Young Money. That put him on the same roster as Drake, Nicki Minaj, and Tyga, a dream lineup. He even landed a spot on XXL's freshman class in 2011. The hype was real. He dropped mixtapes, showed range with singing and melodic tracks, and appeared on Young Money compilation albums. There were high-profile collabs with Justin Bieber, Miley Cyrus, and Chris Brown. But a full solo album never came. Don't get it twisted. Was teased, then delayed, then never released in any real form. The anticipation turned into silence. Then came the derailments. He got arrested in 2013 for a DUI while driving Bieber's Fisker. In 2015, he was involved in an altercation at actor Kyle Massey's home that led to burglary and assault charges. He pleaded no contest and was sentenced to a year in jail. He only served about 2 months, but the damage was done. By the time he got out, the momentum was gone. The headlines were more about who he hung out with and what went wrong, not his music. Without a debut album, consistent output, or clean image, his career lost traction. Twist had the cosigns, the machine, and the stage, but legal trouble, label inaction, and a public image tied to celebrity drama pulled the plug before he ever really got to light up. Obie Trice. He came out of Detroit with no gimmicks and no alias, just a karaoke machine, a battle rap resume, and cosigns from Eminem and Dr. Dre. He dropped his debut Cheers in 2003, and it hit hard. Top 5 on the charts, gold status, and a single like Got Some Teeth that got mainstream play without sounding forced. He showed up in 8 Mile, laced tracks with D12, and looked like Shady's next big success story. But things shifted fast. In 2005, Obie was shot in the head while driving in Detroit. The bullet couldn't be removed and stayed lodged in his skull. Less than a year later, Second Rounds on Me dropped, solid album, decent charting, but not the breakout moment it needed to be. Then came silence. By 2008, he'd parted ways with Shady Records, citing lack of promotion. No beef with Eminem or Dre, just business. He launched his own label, but the major machine was gone. His next album, Bottoms Up, didn't arrive until 2012. The gap was long, and the audience had moved. The Hangover sold under 5,000 its first week. Legal trouble didn't help. A shooting incident in 2019 got him jail time, and more charges followed in 2022. Through it all, Obie kept rapping, but the hype never returned. His career is a case of early promise, strong talent, and major backing, all slowed by real-world chaos, label shifts, and changing rap tastes. He was never gimmicky, never corny, and always respected, just never able to convert that strong start into a lasting spotlight. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.